AMS2 is stuck in an identity crisis. One of the best sims, but nobody drives it. Everyone wanted it, but almost no one uses it. I've been seeing headlines like these or similar ones more and more often lately about Automobilista 2. And I have to tell you that for many months now, I've also wanted to make a comprehensive video about this entire topic, just to deeply reflect for myself how exactly do I truly see AMS2 and what is my current and evolving stance on AMS2 and precisely what it is in its entirety. And well, is AMS2 really in, let's say, an identity crisis, and is it really true that no one or almost no one drives it? And if so, compared to what? And in general. So let's get to the bottom of this in this video. So just so everyone knows, in this video we are not going to be driving. Even though I have the steering wheel attached here, I won't be driving this time. Telltale sign, no gloves, right? And today we're going to focus purely on the theoretical stuff and actually get to the bottom of the question from a literary, philosophical and factual perspective. Is AMS2 in an identity crisis? Yes or no? So let's dive in. Let's go, my friends. Automobilista 2 is often seen or labeled as an oddball or outsider in sim racing, kind of in the middle of things but still not really belonging. Yeah, it's actually great, but then I still don't drive it, you know. While LMU and ACC offer really series-specific licensed focus, a very clear and narrow line in terms of the content they provide. And well, in contrast, AMS2 comes across more like patchwork among the simulations, like a kind of melting pot of ideas, I'd call it. So, to put it bluntly, but is this variety really a problem, or is it actually an underrated, unique selling point? Yeah, and that's exactly what I already mentioned. Let's go ahead and analyze that here. And well, when we talk about the topic or the word identity in the context of a simulation, from my point of view, it's not just about licenses or graphics or some small part, but about the mix of content, target audience, atmosphere, and what keeps us engaged in the long run. LMU and ACC are clearly aimed at the sports grinders. So ACC is focused on the GTWC. The FIA WEC fanatics have found their happiness here in LMU. And well, whatever you don't find there, you'll find in Assetto Corsa, especially with tons of hefty mods, I'd say. From Mario Kart to Nordschleife, everything's included. AMS2 is in between. Not an esports tool, but also not as a sandbox as AC. So from my perspective, it's a curated motorsport timeline with depth, that's what I'd call it. So it's a really broad toolkit as well. This is where Ryza Studios plays. So who actually is Ryza? Well, it's a small independent development team from Brazil, led by Renato Simeoni. Most people know the name, and they don't have some big publisher breathing down their necks. Instead, they really just do what they're passionate about. Motorsport with heart and soul. Ryza uses the Madness engine, everyone knows that, but they've already made significant changes to the underlying framework. They've optimized the physics, tire model and force feedback, all with a real focus on authenticity and on getting everything possible out of this engine. And for my part, I actually truly believe, and this is just my personal assumption, of course, that Ryza Studios isn't really trying to compete directly or invite direct comparisons with other titles, and therefore doesn't genuinely see LMU and ACC as its primary competitors in the sim racing market, nor does it particularly want to be in that competitive space. So they're not aiming for the super duper esports trophy. Instead, I'd say they want to offer a journey through the decades of motorsport, and you can really feel that. From the Formula content of the 80s to the Cobra Truck Onwell, I don't know, South American tracks if you want. As you know from my videos, there's no simulation better suited for OS than AMS2. That's partly due to the wide range of content, the good AI. You always find something entertaining, which primarily entertains me and of course also you, and that's really something special. But I'll also say very clearly and unequivocally that's a specific focus that most dedicated sim racers out there typically don't actively pursue or even consider. So the discussion about AMS2's supposed or alleged identity crisis really just shows one thing. Yes, many sim racers judge a simulation based on how clear its focus is. For example, GT3 or LMP content think ACC, LMU, WECANT, AMS2 deliberately breaks out of this way of thinking. Ryza never tried to build an esports sim, nor was it ever meant to be just a pure GT3 title or some F1 knockoff, but rather a motorsport sandbox, one that curates and represents all eras and disciplines. So the problem is less about a perceived identity crisis and more about the fact that many sim racers simply aren't willing or interested in embracing such a broad vision as Ryza offers. They just don't recognize that. And the different types of sim racers have completely different demands and expectations. And that's totally okay and normal, you know. From my perspective, there are basically two major groups: the grinders-focused, competitive, setup-heavy, extremely esports oriented, who naturally gravitate towards ACC, LMU or iRacing. And then of course there are the all-rounders, the sandbox players and the casuals, and they like to explore, they like to tinker, they enjoy cruising solo, you know. They feel much more at home in AMS2, RC or even Race Room. So AMS2 is clearly aimed at a different target audience, and that's not a mistake or anything strange, it's completely intentional. So my friends, there is definitely no identity crisis here. Rather, the true identity is simply, well, I'd say not really recognized, you know. But sometimes maybe people just don't want to recognize it, and that's perfectly fine. And this is exactly what makes it special for me. AMS2 isn't aimed at the esports crowd, but at those sim racers who want to experience motorsport in its full historical breadth. So not grinding one series to the max, but also, you know, looking beyond the horizon. For those who want to enjoy different eras, classes, driving physics, tracks from entirely different continents, historic Formula content on South American circuits, or trucks or rallycross, or here is a playground that no other sim represents in this way. And it's not just about having less grind, quite the opposite. For me personally, it's really the variety change in perspective when jumping from era to era that creates a very special kind of thrill for me. And that's exactly what makes it for me, yeah. And all the content that no one else really digitizes, like all the Brazilian racing series, whether historical or new, tracks like Turuma or Cascavel, exclusive, high quality, and absolutely demanding to drive, you simply can't get those anywhere else. Again, the question, why does no one play AMS2? You know, I looked at the numbers on SteamB. Of course, as I said at the beginning, AMS2 can't and probably doesn't even want to compete with LMU or ACC or an iRacing, which, by the way, is hard to evaluate on SteamBB because they basically use their own launcher. But looking at the numbers actually tell a somewhat different story than the usual claims that no one plays AMS2. So most recently they had a 24-hour peak of just under 2,800 players. That clearly puts them ahead of Race Room and rFactor 2. Okay, fair enough, that's not exactly difficult. But even though LMU now leads with its new peak of around 6,300, I think AMS2 isn't that far behind, and that's without official leaks, a big esports stage, or any kind of multi-million-dollar advertising. It's just a niche project, and for that I think it's damn solid. Maybe there really isn't a crisis after all. From my point of view, there isn't one, it's more of a perception gap. These days a lot of people expect clear structures like the GT World Challenge, or I keep coming back to it, the WEC in LMU. But AMS2 operates differently. They're aimed at people who are into variety, who appreciate breadth, not those who want to grind out 200 laps at Spa, but rather someone who might do an F1 race from 88, then hop into a Copa truck and then switch to a DTM 91 car. So really, I'd say people who want to discover motorsport and don't want to get lost in grinding lap times. So that's not a weakness of AMS2, that's exactly the concept. And that's exactly what makes it special. AMS2 isn't just aimed at the esports crowd, or not at all really, but at those sim racers who want to experience motorsport in all its diversity, especially its historical diversity. So it's not about grinding through a single series to the end, but rather about looking beyond your own nose, taking a look beyond the horizon of time, from historic Formula content to South American trucks, from karts to stock cars. That's an absolute unique selling point of Ryza and Automobilista 2. So what have we established so far? My assumption is quite clear. They are not and do not want to be in competition or in direct competition with the license-specific simulations. They very clearly and quite deliberately offer a very broad and diverse range of compelling content with a strong and significant historical focus. And well, let's be honest, what would still need to happen even if everything is already as good as I think it is? So what else would actually need to happen for AMS2 to gain even broader appeal? I have a few ideas about that, I would say. A new game UI, more modern, clearer, with a favorites function, with good preset management, just an overall better way to access the content, you know. Career mode for solo players, multiplayer, you know, with integrated matchmaking, ratings, but really no matter what other content comes, like tracks or vehicles, well, not that it doesn't matter, but it's secondary. Because, let me put it this way, I can honestly say this with a clear conscience, the foundation is there and it's solid. And that's why AMS2 is a sim with character, with soul, with a touch of Brazilian spirit, you know, with its own identity. It's not just a copy of ACC or LMU, but truly something unique. A journey through motorsport from the 60s to today, with a lot of South American content. And I think that's exactly what the community's special AMS2 community wants as well. And just to clarify again for me, so guys, don't get me wrong, these are all just my personal opinions and simply my attitude about it, my wishes and ideas, and a bit of anecdotal evidence I've gathered with AMS2. But I think what you can really say in good conscience, if you've spent some time with Ryza Studios and AMS2, is that you can definitely say they're not having an identity crisis. This is a very deliberately chosen path by Ryza, one that not everyone takes and that also doesn't result in a huge player base. But from my perspective, it's also a worthwhile path. So how can I best sum this up? How do I, personally guys, this is really just my own personal perception, assessment and opinion. It's neither right nor wrong. It's simply Knut's take, yeah? So how do I see AMS2? How do I see Ryza? Let's get a bit poetic. So for me, AMS2 tells the story of motorsport from the 60s up to today into the present with Brazilian DNA. It's not about competition or grinding or license battles here. It's also not about building some huge, gigantic mod ecosystem and maybe competing with AC. AMS2's identity is simply that of a curated all-rounder. A motorsport museum, I'd say, with a Brazilian soul. While AC clearly relies on community mods and ACC or LMU focus on relicensed series and thus branch off entirely into esports, AMS2 offers what I would call a professionally curated selection of vehicles, tracks and settings from a wide range of eras, classes and regions. So I'll put it this way, the nearly 2,800 concurrent racers at the 24-hour peak in recent months clearly show that this curated content, this variety, is truly appreciated. Not as some kind of competitor to LMU or RCC or iRacing, but as a completely independent concept, as its own thing. AMS2 is broader than LMU or RCC, more curated than, well, what I'd call the ModLab AC, and more independent than much of what the sim racing scene otherwise has to offer. So from my perspective, it's a sim with real character and a genuine community that knows exactly how to place it and truly appreciates it for what it is. Of course, it's smaller than ACC, LMU, iRacing, etc. But it's this special focus and it's exactly this community that likes, loves, and appreciates it. That's it for today's topic on AMS2. You've heard my take and my opinion on it. Now, I'm really curious to know, how do you see it? Do you feel the same way a little bit or completely different? No matter what, let me know in the comments. And if you happen to enjoy these more theoretical videos every now and then for a change, and since it can't always just be an Otzathon, feel free to let me know that in the comments as well. And yes, I don't need to tell you, subscribing on YouTube is always free. You support me if you don't already have one. It doesn't cost you anything. And yes, if you enjoyed it, definitely leave me a like. I'm really looking forward to hearing your opinions. Once again, I'm excited to read your comments and assessments. My dears, that's it for today's video. Everything has been said. Stay healthy. I'm out. Ciao.